The screech of tires echoed through downtown Seattle as metal collided with concrete. Daniel Blackwood felt his luxury sports car spin once, twice, before slamming into the highway barrier. The airbag exploded into his face, leaving him dazed but conscious. His first thought wasn't about injury or safety, it was about the board meeting he was now going to miss. "Sir, please don't move." A paramedic's face appeared in his window. "We're going to get you out." Daniel tried to wave him away, but a sharp pain in his ribs stopped him mid-gesture. "I'm fine," he managed through gritted teeth. "Just call my driver." The emergency room encounter. 20 minutes later, Daniel found himself being wheeled into Seattle General Hospital's emergency room. The fluorescent lights assaulted his eyes, and the smell of antiseptic made his stomach turn. Everything about this place offended his sense of control. He was Daniel Blackwood, founder and CEO of Nexus Technologies, a man who commanded rooms full of investors and made million-dollar decisions before breakfast. He didn't belong on a hospital gurney. "I need a private room immediately," he announced to no one in particular. "And someone call Dr. Hammond. He's my personal physician." The nurse pushing his gurney barely glanced at him. "You'll be seen by whoever's on duty, sir. We're at capacity tonight." Before Daniel could argue, a curtain was yanked open, and a woman in a white coat stepped into his cubicle. She wasn't what he expected. Dr. Lucia Moreno was younger than the gray-haired specialists he usually dealt with, probably in her early 30s, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and eyes that held no trace of deference. "Mr. Blackwood," she said, reading from her tablet without looking up. "I'm Dr. Moreno. I'll be treating you tonight." "Doctor, I think there's been a misunderstanding," Daniel began, using his boardroom voice. "What you need is to lie still while I assess your injuries," Lucia interrupted smoothly, finally meeting his gaze. Her eyes were a deep brown, direct and unflinching. "Can you tell me where it hurts?" The battle of wills begins. Daniel felt his irritation spike. People didn't interrupt him. "My left side. Ribs, I think. But I'm sure it's nothing serious. If you could just let me be the judge of what's serious." Lucia's hands were already moving, professional and efficient, checking his pupils with a penlight. "Any dizziness? Nausea? Loss of consciousness?" "No, no, and no." Daniel tried to sit up. "Listen, doctor." Her hand on his shoulder was surprisingly firm. "Mr. Blackwood, I've reviewed your accident report. Your car was totaled. You hit that barrier at considerable speed. You're lucky to be conscious, let alone argumentative. I appreciate your concern, but this isn't concern. It's medical protocol." Lucia picked up her stethoscope. "Breathe deeply for me." Something in her tone made Daniel pause. It wasn't harsh, exactly, but it carried absolute authority. He found himself obeying, drawing in a breath that sent a spike of pain through his left side. "Fractured ribs," Lucia murmured, making notes. "Possibly 2 or 3. We'll need X-rays and a CT scan to rule out internal bleeding." "That's not necessary," Daniel protested. "I've had broken ribs before. I know what they feel like." Lucia looked up from her tablet, and for the first time, something flickered in her expression, not anger, but something close to it. "Mr. Blackwood, I'm going to be very clear with you. I don't care if you own half of Seattle or if you're late for a meeting with the president himself. In this hospital, you're a patient. My patient. And my job is to make sure you don't die from an injury you're too proud to treat properly." The breaking point. The cubicle fell silent. Daniel stared at her, genuinely shocked. No one spoke to him that way. Not his employees, not his competitors, not even his late father during their worst arguments. This woman, this doctor he'd never met before tonight, had just put him firmly in his place. Furthermore, Lucia continued, her voice level but with an edge of steel, "if you continue to refuse treatment, I'll have security escort you out. You can sign the release forms and leave. But if you collapse in the parking lot from a brain bleed we didn't catch because you were too arrogant to let us help you, that's on you." Daniel opened his mouth to respond, then closed it. The pain in his ribs was getting worse, not better. His head was starting to throb. And beneath his anger, something else stirred, a grudging respect for this woman who refused to be intimidated. "Fine," he said finally. "Do your tests. The long night ahead." Lucia nodded, her expression unchanged. "Smart choice. We'll start with X-rays, then move to CT. A nurse will be in shortly to prep you." She turned to leave, then paused at the curtain. "And Mr. Blackwood? The phone stays off. No calls, no emails. Your brain needs rest, not stimulation. You can't seriously expect." "I can and I do." Lucia's eyes met his one more time, and Daniel saw something in them he couldn't quite name. Determination, certainly. But also something softer, a genuine concern for his well-being that had nothing to do with his bank account or his influence. "You're not invincible, Mr. Blackwood. The sooner you accept that, the better." She disappeared through the curtain, leaving Daniel alone with the beeping monitors and his wounded pride. He looked down at his phone, still clutched in his hand, then slowly set it on the side table. For the first time in 15 years, Daniel Blackwood was about to spend a night doing absolutely nothing. And the woman who'd forced him into it had just become the most fascinating person he'd met in a very long time, the hospital transformed at night. The frantic energy of the emergency room gave way to a hushed efficiency, punctuated only by the occasional beep of monitors and the soft footsteps of night shift nurses. Daniel lay in his private room, a concession the hospital administration had finally granted after multiple calls from his assistant, staring at the ceiling tiles and counting the hours until he could leave. The CT scan had shown no brain bleeding, which Lucia had delivered as good news with the same professional detachment she'd shown all evening. 2 fractured ribs, as she'd suspected. Minor contusions. Nothing life-threatening, but enough to keep him under observation for 24 hours. He hated every minute of it. When the doctor returns. At 2:47 a.m., Daniel was still awake when his door opened quietly. He expected a nurse coming to check his vitals for the 3rd time that night. Instead, Lucia Moreno stepped into the dim room, still in her scrubs but looking more tired than she had hours earlier. "You should be sleeping," she said softly, not sounding particularly surprised to find him awake. "So should you," Daniel countered. "Isn't your shift over?" Lucia moved to the chair beside his bed, sitting down with a sigh that spoke of 12-hour days and aching feet. "Technically, yes. But I wanted to check on something. My vitals are fine. The nurses have been very thorough." "I wasn't checking your vitals." Lucia held up her tablet. "I was reviewing your medical history. The complete version." Daniel felt something cold settle in his stomach. "That's confidential. And I'm your treating physician. I have access." Lucia's voice was gentle now, lacking the stern authority from earlier. "Your father died of a heart attack at 43. Your mother from a stroke at 45. Both hereditary conditions that you're at high risk for. I'm aware of my family history, doctor." "Are you?" Lucia leaned forward, her eyes searching his face in the low light. "Because your records show you've refused preventive medication 3 times in the past 5 years. You work 90-hour weeks. Your last vacation was 4 years ago. You have documented stress-related hypertension, and according to your physician's notes, you suffer from chronic insomnia. The walls come down." Daniel turned his head away, looking at the dark window. "I don't need a lecture. I'm not lecturing you. I'm trying to understand you." Lucia's voice was quiet but insistent. "You're not just arrogant, Mr. Blackwood. You're terrified. The words hit him like a physical blow. No one had ever said it out loud before. No one had looked past the expensive suits and the corporate success to see the fear that drove him. My parents built Blackwood Industries from nothing, Daniel said after a long silence. When they died, everyone expected me to fail. I was 24 years old, suddenly running a company worth billions, with a board of directors who thought I was just a spoiled kid playing businessman. So you worked yourself to the bone to prove them wrong. I did more than that. I tripled the company's value. I expanded into 6 new markets. I became someone who couldn't be dismissed or underestimated. Daniel's voice was rough. And if that means I don't have time for vacations or 8 hours of sleep, then so be it. Lucia was quiet for a moment. Your parents died young, Daniel. Doesn't that scare you? Hearing his first name from her lips did something to him. It stripped away another layer of his armor. Every single day, he admitted. I see their faces every time I close my eyes. I wonder if this will be the year my body betrays me the same way theirs did. A different kind of medicine. So your solution is to run faster? Work harder? As if you can outpace genetics through sheer willpower? Lucia shook her head. That's not courage, Mr. Blackwood. That's denial. Then what would you have me do, doctor? Slow down? Take it easy? Wait for the inevitable? I'd have you live, Lucia said simply. Not just exist. Not just work. Actually live. Daniel looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. In the dim light of the hospital room, with her guard down and exhaustion showing on her face, she was beautiful. But more than that, she was real. She wasn't intimidated by his wealth or his reputation. She saw him, the frightened man beneath the billionaire facade. Why do you care? He asked quietly. I'm just another patient. You must see dozens like me every week. I see people who think they're invincible until their bodies prove them wrong, Lucia corrected. But most of them don't have the resources you have. Most of them can't afford the best preventive care, the stress management programs, the lifestyle changes that could add decades to their lives. You can, and you're choosing not to. That makes me angry. Angry enough to sit with me at 3 a.m? A small smile crossed Lucia's face. Angry enough to want to shake some sense into you. But the hospital frowns on doctors assaulting their patients. Despite everything, Daniel laughed. It hurt his ribs, but he laughed. You're not what I expected, Dr. Moreno. And what did you expect? Someone who would be impressed by my name. Someone who would treat me differently because of who I am. In this hospital, you're just a man with broken ribs and a stubborn streak, Lucia said, standing up. But outside these walls? You could be so much more than you're allowing yourself to be. The morning after. When dawn finally broke, Lucia returned in her official capacity to discharge him. The vulnerability of their late-night conversation had been carefully packed away, replaced by professional courtesy. But something had shifted between them, an understanding that neither acknowledged but both felt. You're cleared to leave, Lucia said, handing him his discharge papers. Rest for at least a week. No heavy lifting. Follow up with your doctor in 3 days. Daniel took the papers, their fingers brushing briefly. And if I don't? Then I'll show up at your office and drag you back here myself. Lucia's smile was slight but genuine. Don't test me, Mr. Blackwood. As he stood to leave, Daniel reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. Not his corporate card, but a personal one with only his name and private number. In case you ever need anything, he said, offering it to her. Or if you just want to continue our conversation somewhere other than a hospital. Lucia looked at the card, then at him. For a moment, he thought she would refuse. Then her hand extended, taking the card and slipping it into her pocket. Get some rest, Daniel, she said softly. And think about what we talked about. As he walked out of the hospital into the bright morning sun, Daniel realized something had fundamentally changed. For the first time since his parents died, someone had looked past his achievements and his armor to see the frightened man underneath. And instead of judging him, she had challenged him to be better. He didn't know what to do with that. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty: he would see Dr. Lucia Moreno again. The card sat in Lucia's locker at the hospital for exactly 10 days. She knew it was there, could feel its presence even when she was 3 floors away treating patients. It was a small thing, just embossed cardstock with a phone number, but it represented something dangerous, the possibility of crossing a line she'd never crossed before. Lucia Moreno had clear rules about her professional life. She didn't date patients. She didn't blur the boundaries between her role as a healer and her personal desires. Medicine was sacred to her, a calling she'd pursued despite her family's wishes that she become a lawyer like her father. She'd sacrificed relationships, social life, and countless hours of sleep to become the doctor she was today. And yet, she thought about Daniel Blackwood far more than she should. The unexpected visitor. It was a Thursday afternoon when her clinic receptionist, Rita, buzzed her office with unusual excitement in her voice. "Dr. Moreno? There's a Mr. Blackwood here. He says he needs to see you about a follow-up from his hospital stay." Lucia's heart skipped. She'd convinced herself he wouldn't call, that their midnight conversation had been forgotten as soon as he'd returned to his high-powered life. "Send him in," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Daniel entered her small office looking every bit the billionaire tech mogul. His charcoal suit was perfectly tailored, his dark hair styled just enough to look effortless. But when he met her eyes, she saw the same vulnerability he'd shown in the hospital room. "Mr. Blackwood," she said professionally, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. "What brings you here? Are you having complications from your injuries?" "Nothing serious," Daniel said, settling into the chair with care. "But I've been experiencing some lingering pain in my ribs. I thought it best to have you check it out." Lucia studied him carefully. His posture was too relaxed for someone in real pain. His color was good. There was no sign of the discomfort that would accompany a worsening rib fracture. "You could have called your regular physician. I trust your judgment more." Daniel's gaze was steady, challenging. "You were right about everything else. The examination. Professional protocol demanded that she examine him, patient complaint or not." Lucia stood, retrieving her stethoscope from the desk drawer. "I'll need to listen to your lungs. If you could remove your jacket and unbutton your shirt." The atmosphere in the small office shifted as Daniel complied. He shrugged off his jacket, revealing a crisp white shirt that he began to unbutton with deliberate slowness. Lucia kept her expression neutral, but she was acutely aware of the intimacy of the moment, the way the afternoon sun slanted through her window and painted golden stripes across his chest. "Breathe normally," she instructed, pressing her stethoscope to his back. His skin was warm through the thin fabric of his undershirt. She listened to the steady rhythm of his breathing, the strong beat of his heart, and found no sign of complications. "Your lungs sound clear," she said, stepping back. "The ribs are healing as expected. There's no medical reason for the pain you described." Daniel turned to face her, leaving his shirt unbuttoned. "You're right. I lied. The truth emerges." Lucia should have been angry. Should have told him to leave, to never return, to respect professional boundaries. Instead, she found herself asking, "Why?" "Because I couldn't stop thinking about you," Daniel said simply. "Because in 10 days, I've tried to forget our conversation, tried to go back to my normal life, and found that I couldn't. Everything you said to me that night was true. And I needed to see you again." "Daniel," she began, but he stood, closing the small distance between them. "I took a vacation," he said. "First one in 4 years. Just a long weekend, but I actually left the office. I also made an appointment with a cardiologist. Started taking the blood pressure medication I'd been refusing. Changed my diet. Started sleeping 7 hours a night instead of 4. Lucia felt something catch in her throat. That's good. I'm glad. I did all of it because you made me see myself clearly for the first time in years. Daniel's voice dropped lower. And now I'm here, probably breaking a dozen ethical rules, to ask if you'd have dinner with me. Not as doctor and patient. Just as two people who had a meaningful conversation at 3 in the morning. Crossing the line. Every instinct told Lucia to say no. To maintain her professional integrity. To protect herself from the complications that would inevitably arise from dating someone as high-profile as Daniel Blackwood. But another part of her, the part that had sat with him in that hospital room and glimpsed the man beneath the armor, wanted to say yes. This is highly inappropriate, she said finally. I know. If anyone found out, it could compromise my professional reputation. I know that too. And you're still asking? Daniel smiled, and it transformed his face from handsome to genuinely warm. I'm asking because life is short. Because my parents taught me that lesson the hard way. Because you're the first person in a decade who's made me want to slow down and actually experience my life instead of just racing through it. Lucia looked at him for a long moment. She thought about all the rules she'd followed, all the boundaries she'd maintained, all the safe choices she'd made. And she thought about the fact that she was 32 years old and couldn't remember the last time someone had looked at her the way Daniel was looking at her now, like she mattered, like she was extraordinary. Friday night, she heard herself say. But somewhere quiet. No publicity, no photographers. I know a place, Daniel said, his smile widening. A small Italian restaurant in Fremont. The owner values privacy. And this doesn't make me your doctor anymore, Lucia added firmly. If you need medical care, you see someone else. Agreed. Daniel buttoned his shirt, then shrugged back into his jacket. At the door, he paused. Thank you, Lucia. It was the first time he'd used her first name while fully conscious, and the sound of it made something flutter in her chest. New beginnings. After he left, Lucia sat at her desk for a long time, staring at the place where he'd stood. She'd just broken one of her cardinal rules, crossed a line she'd sworn never to cross. But instead of regret, she felt something else entirely, anticipation. She pulled out her phone and texted her best friend, another doctor at the hospital, I think I just did something really stupid. Or really right. I can't tell which. The response came back immediately, details. Now. Lucia smiled and began typing, already wondering what she would wear on Friday night, already imagining what it would be like to sit across from Daniel Blackwood in a setting that had nothing to do with hospitals or emergencies or professional boundaries. She'd spent 10 years building her career on certainty, on protocols and procedures and doing everything by the book. Maybe it was time to embrace a little uncertainty. Maybe it was time to take the same advice she'd given Daniel that night, to actually live, not just exist. As the afternoon sun continued to stream through her window, Lucia felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time, the thrilling, terrifying sensation of stepping into the unknown. And for once, she wasn't afraid.